Hey guys, Chauncey Phillips here. Welcome to my November 2nd DVD update, where I talk about all the DVDs and Blu-rays I've gotten over the last 2 weeks or so. Like I always say, if you enjoy these DVD Blu-ray updates, definitely give this video a thumbs up. Leave me a comment below on what you thought of the titles that I've talked about in this update. Now, the first ones I got from Scream Factory, Shout Factory, Scream Factory line. Now, the first one I got is Night of the Comet. This is one of my favorite, one of my top favorite movies, and also my favorite end-of-the-world films. Love the new artwork that, Scream Factory had commissioned for this. Now, the movie's basically about these two, this comet that's come to Earth. Everyone's, celebrating that it's coming, going outside to see it, having parties about it, and everybody that goes outside to see this ends up basically turning into dust, and some of them who have like slight exposure to it end up basically dying very slowly. They're kind of like zombies and they're losing their mind. It's basically like dehydrating them to death. But these two sisters, for one reason or another, because of where they were, end up, not affected by the comet, and end up, the one sister is kind of naive and doesn't want to believe that everyone's gone. The other sister is pretty much facing reality that everyone's gone, and they end up running into one survivor, this guy at a radio station. That's like their first place they go, because they hear on, for some reason, someone's still talking on the radio. Of course, it's a recording when they get there. I don't know. I just love that, how like with the radio station aspect of how everybody's dead, but it's all pre-recorded. They're kind of pretending like it's live, and this thing could probably go forever, pretending, kind of like, oh, there's somebody at this radio station. No, they're all dead, but this is on tape. But they end up getting there, and it's just basically about them, like what they're doing, trying to see if there's anybody else alive, but pretty much like doing their own stuff, like going shopping. They're trying out guns if they have to defend themselves, and to me, though, this is one of my favorite end-of-the-world films where everyone goes missing. Like I said, really looks great on Blu-ray. This is one, though, if you have not seen this, I've talked about this one, like I said, for so many years, and I'm such a fan of this one. Highly recommend to check this out. It has a great, 80s synth soundtrack. You don't hear movies with this kind of music at all anymore. I still, to this day, and even the actors on the features were talking about how they wish they would do a follow-up to this, and it'd be so cool if they finally did do one, 30 years later and show, where the characters are now. To me, I always wish they did a follow-up to this. Highly recommend this. Has a commentary on here and new interviews with the cast. I don't know, this is one I can't recommend enough. And the next one I got is John Carpenter's Presents Body Bags, which to me, this is one of my favorite anthology films, and I feel like it's kind of one of the lesser known ones. This is one that used to be on, came to DVD years back. It was kind of a sought after, out of print one, sold for really high prices. I remember when I used to see 1 million copies of it in the $5 bin, when they first came out, along with like things like Drop Dead Fred, which are now another one of the sought after, out of print ones. And this movie is basically Showtime, wanted to do an anthology series, kind of like, Tales from the Crypt, and this was like, I think 1993 this came out, so it was kind of the heyday of Tales from the Crypt. Of course, the anthology series never ended up happening. This was like the pilot movie, and they never did the anthology series because they couldn't replicate the quality that John Carpenter and Tobe Hooper did with their shorts, with the budget restraints and things like that. They were going to have to go to Canada to shoot it and, have like, I think less than half the budget. I'm kind of glad that I know, I would actually have loved to have seen that, but they kind of ended up making a series like this years later for Showtime, which was the Massive Horror series. But this has 3 different shorts on here. And the one thing I really want to talk about before we get into the shorts is this is a new uncut edition. The old DVD was so cut up. They cut out a number of the blood, the nudity, just a ton of stuff was taken out of the original DVD. This is the most uncut version that has ever been seen, even more than the original, airings on Showtime. They even restored blood in the first segment, some extra blood, which was a really pretty cool death in that one. Now, the first segment in this, though, is about a girl who ends up getting a job for her first night in this real small, open all night gas station. It's one of those ones where you don't see this type anymore. It's when they sit in the middle and you can come up to them and put your money under the thing, and somebody is ending up like stalking her at this gas station. There's a lot of great cameos in this one. Wes Craven has a cameo in this. and that was a cameo that was cut out of the old DVD for some reason. He was pretty creepy in this, and like John Carpenter presents all the shorts, and he's the guy at the morgue, and he kind of plays like a crypt keeper type. He was talking about his character was kind of based the way he was playing it on like Beetlejuice. Now, the second segment is a guy who ends up getting a hair transplant, and it's kind of reminded me like of a deranged version of peanut butter solution, when the hair kept on growing. With him, it ends up, there's something really strange about the source of this hair. That to me was like the real quirky segment. The last segment was the most serious, and that was the one that Tobe Hooper did. This was about a baseball player that ends up losing his eye, and he ends up getting the eye of someone. I don't want to like ruin too much about that, but it ends up pretty bad who he got the eye from. I don't know, to me this is just a really, really well done anthology series. Like I said, it would kind of have been cool just to wonder, how long this would have gone if it was a series, kind of like if it would have gone as long as things like Tales from the Crypt. Has commentaries on here with Robert Carradine and John Carpenter, and then interviews with John Carpenter, Robert Carradine, and Stacy Keach. This is just a really fun anthology series. Cannot recommend this one enough. The next one is, I think this was John Carpenter's second film that he ever made, feature, and it's Assault on Precinct 13. For some reason, I used to always get sort of dyslexic with this and thought it was Assault on 13th Precinct. This is one of the movies, too, where they made a remake to this, and I felt like it was a really forgotten remake. Like, you hardly ever hear anyone talk about it. I don't even remember if I liked it. I know it was Ethan Hawke and Lawrence Fishburne, but it kind of just like came out and then got no one even talking about it. But this, to me, is just a classic John Carpenter. Everything with the music, and you could tell though, I don't know, to me, I feel like he was always good. I feel like John Carpenter really never has made a bad movie, and especially when he's doing the music for it, and he did it for all of his early movies. His music is some of the best synth, especially this one. Has kind of music that I would relate to, kind of an early stage of what he did with like Escape from New York. Kind of like this movie too has that kind of feel to Escape from New York. The movie's basically about though this guy who's a cop and ends up, I think he's promoted to sergeant, and his first night he kind of is like a gag, ends up getting put to watch this precinct that's basically closing down and moving to a new location. And he ends up going there just basically to be there while the lights go off and while everyone else goes over to the new place, moving everything over. And he ends up, this is basically the worst night this can happen to him. He ends up getting there, and it's basically about, it kind of, the whole reason the thing happens is this guy's with his daughter in this neighborhood asking directions. The daughter ends up getting killed by the street gang. The dad goes after the street gang, kills one of the guys, runs off into this closing down police station, and the gang end up coming there, and basically what their goal is to kill everybody. They don't care if they live or die. There's also a group of these high death row inmates that are being transported across country. One of them is sick, so they have to stop at the closest precinct. They end up at this precinct, and it's basically about the prisoners and the cop, pretty much trying to survive and fight off these, this street gang. Great like action scenes in this, explosions and stuff like this. And this is back when they were doing everything practical. A lot of this now would be done CGI and things like this. It's just a really, really fun, action film. The next one I got from Universal, and this one to me has a real big, like a feel to movies like Men in Black, that kind of a feel. And it's R.I.P.D, it's Rest in Peace Department. And it's stars Ryan Reynolds and Jeff Bridges. And I feel like this movie kind of went under the radar. Like, not a lot of people saw this. But I thought it was a fun movie. Like I said, if you like movies like Men in Black, I think you'd like this because it really has that kind of feel to it. But Ryan Reynolds is a cop who ends up killed out in the force, ends up coming back and, waking up in, like the afterlife in the R.I.P. division, and gets basically, commissioned to be a cop, and basically, gets partnered up with Jeff Bridges' character. It's basically about them having to work together, and they don't really get along very well, and it's kind of like the problems that go on. They're sent to kill all the dead people that are still on Earth that are kind of like not accepting it, and they can kind of see them and how they really look, and the actor Devin Rattray, who is Buzz in Home Alone, has a part in this. I don't know, just to me, this was a really fun movie. I like movies like this. I just thought that, like I said, it kind of, not a lot of people I felt like saw this one, but it really was good. And, Jeff Bridges, to me, is really what made this movie. He kind of plays like an old school kind of cowboy character, because he died back in the Old West, his character. I don't know, I would definitely would recommend this. I know it was based off a graphic novel, or a comic book. It has alternate openings on here, but definitely I would recommend check this out. It has a gag reel and deleted scenes as well, but this was a really fun one. Now the next one from Universal, as well as the Danny Trejo film, Dead in the Tombstone. This is basically, an Old West film, and Danny Trejo's the head of this gang, this like Desperados gang, where they basically go around and steal money from the towns and things like that. And Anthony Michael Hall's character's on the the Desperados with him, who's going around stealing the money. And he has heard about this town where they're having kind of land disputes, and all the gold and the money of the town was locked up. And they make the plan of going there and stealing all the money. And when they get there, Anthony Michael Hall's character kind of flips out and believes that he can take over this town, and the whole gang ends up, turning on Danny Trejo, and Danny Trejo gets killed, and he makes a pact, and says, I'm going to be back for you, and I'm going to get you all. He ends up getting sent to hell, where it's Mickey Rourke as the devil, and they make a deal. If Danny Trejo within 24 hours ends up killing these guys, he ends up freeing his soul, you know what I mean, and in exchange for their souls. So this is just a fun revenge film. I thought it was a different take on these kind of West films and things like that, because you don't see too many Old West films anymore. Got a bunch of different features in here, deleting scenes, making of. I'm a huge fan of Danny Trejo, and if you like him, definitely would check this out. Like I said, Anthony Michael Hall too definitely plays a really different character in this. Now the next one from Time Life, this is a really, really fun show, and it's Mama's Family, the complete collection. Now all the DVDs in here are, individual, individual cases, and I believe the only ones that have ever been released so far separately are the first three. So it's very cool to see them all, in their own set. Now, Mama's Family was based on a sketch that was on the Carol Burnett show. And on the second season of this disc, they have the pilot movie that they made, Eunice. And here's the cover to this. Now, inside of it, they have a pretty cool thing in here, which is like a family, pictures from it. And they have like the family tree to the characters in the show. That's a pretty cool thing. And then stuff about the characters in it. Betty White was in some of the early seasons, but then she ended up, it was kind of interesting about the show was, it was on for 2 seasons, ended up getting canceled, and then ended up being brought back as a syndicated show. And I never totally understand what syndicated means, with how that aired. I guess it would air on different networks or something like that. But when it came back through syndication, it kind of changed a few things about it, and at that point Golden Girls was on, so Betty White and the other character left the show. But this to me is a really fun show. Like I said, it was based on the Mama sketch from the Carol Burnett show, and it's basically about the one who's in makeup, to look old. And it's funny, she's actually was pretty young doing this, like 20 some years younger than Carol Burnett. But this is just a really, really fun kind of movie, kind of film, kind of series about all the kind of problems that they get into. And this is, like I said, one that I used to watch all the time as a kid. It ended in 1990, so I was watching the very last season. I remember watching back when Pee-wee's Playhouse was on, and then I believe it re-aired in 1997 on I think TBS, and that was when I had saw all the early seasons. But this is one, like I said, you can only get on the Time Life site, but this is a really fun series. And the next one I got, and this is one from Cinedigm, and this is one of the last released James Gandolfini movies, because on DVD and Blu-ray. This movie, though, was really hard to watch just because of kind of the subject matter. And, I'm really a big fan of James Gandolfini, especially started liking him a lot in the last couple of years. I really need to watch The Sopranos. For some reason, I never watched the show, but it's Violet and Daisy, and it's these two girls who are kind of assassins, and they end up getting they kind of just that's a whole kind of different take on this. These girls who are assassins, and they have to kill all these guys and things like that. They end up getting put on the case by Danny Trejo to kill James Gandolfini's character because he ended up stealing money from someone. I think it was from him. Danny Trejo, though, is only in this movie, though, for like maybe a minute. It's a real quick little cameo. But James Gandolfini is like the star of this. And the girls get there, and they kind of... The one girl was from The Host, and Hannah. She's been a lot of really cool stuff lately. It was kind of funny, too. The other girl is from, like, the Sister of the Traveling Pants and stuff, and they both, like, she doesn't age at all, the one. It was kind of amazing. Like, I thought, are they, like, supposed to be, like, the same age? But when I looked the one up, she's, like, so much older, but you can't even tell. Like, I think they're kind of supposed to be, like, around the same age or similar. But the movie, like I said, they get there, and they kind of have compassion for for James Gandolfini's character, and they really don't want to have to kill him. But they kind of know they have to, and it's kind of about them getting to know James Gandolfini's character. And like I said, I cried really bad at the end of this movie. I just thought this was so good, and James Gandolfini is such a likable actor, and he always brings so much, just this likable charm to him that I always really, really like. But I would highly recommend this movie. It's from the writer of Precious, and he directed this one, but this was, like, to me, one of my favorite things I've watched in a long time, but it is very sad. The next one I got from Disney is Mickey's Christmas Carol. This is one that I watched. This is a new Blu-ray. This is one that I watched as a kid. I remember a lot. I don't feel like they air it on TV as much anymore. I haven't seen it in a really long time. But what I love about these kind of Christmas specials and stuff that Disney does is they don't have anything to them that really dates them. They are very timeless. Like this movie, it was, the special was made in the 80s, but at the same time, it kind of feels like some of their stuff from the 50s. At the same time, it kind of feels like it could be new. But the kind of thing the only thing that kind of ages it is, I don't think as many kids in this day and age now, younger kids, would know all the characters as well as like I did. Well, because I felt like these characters you don't see as much anymore. There aren't too many kind of movies. There really aren't when you really think about it. It's more like Pixar and that kind of stuff that I feel like kids know more. Because like when you go to Disney in Florida, the Toontown is gone. So I feel like a lot of these characters you don't know as well. So that's why it's pretty cool that it's out, and I feel like a lot of kids are kind of going to rediscover these characters a little bit more now. But it's Disney's kind of take on the Charles Dickens Christmas Carol, and it's Ebenezer Scrooge, and it's basically him being visited by three ghosts because he's very greedy, and the one ghost is the McCracken character is played by Goofy. The one is Mickey. So it's kind of like they have all their big, name, kind of their name characters that you see in the original early Disney films come together in this. It's just a really fun. It's only 25 minutes, so it's a little short. But they aired this on TV in the 80s, and the early 90s is when I remembered seeing it. It also has short films on here. I think it's like 6 short films, and they all feature the characters that you see in this. So it's basically a little short about the characters in this. One of the classic ones. This is to me just a really nice Christmas film. And like I said, I grew up watching this one, so I definitely would check that one out. The next one I got from Sony is White House Down, and this stars Channing Tatum and Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx plays the president in this movie. Channing Tatum is going to basically interview, and he brought his daughter with him to interview to be a Secret Service agent, and it's not really going very well. It doesn't really look like he's going to end up getting this job, but when he's leaving, he basically is there at the right time and ends up, the White House is getting taken over by these criminals, and all the Secret Service agents end up getting killed, and Channing Tatum ends up pretty much having to rescue the president. So it's kind of has the vibe of things like Die Hard with him kind of crawling around the fence. But what makes it a little bit different is his daughter is there, kind of gets, taken, basically held hostage, and he has to get his daughter as well, and it's kind of like him in a way interviewing for the position of being like the only person in there that can save the president. This was just a really fun movie. Like I said, I ended up liking this one a lot more than I thought. It's got a gag reel in here, a number of different features in the visual effects and things like that. This is just a really, really fun movie. I would definitely recommend checking this one out. The next one, and this is one I had not heard too much about from Anchor Bay, and it's All Is Bright. And I'm surprised this one didn't come to theaters. And it stars Paul Giamatti and Paul Rudd, and they were both really good in this. And Paul Giamatti was basically a guy who just got released from jail. He goes back to see his wife and daughter, and he's been away for 4 years. His wife ended up telling the daughter that he died, so he gets back there. It's really sad because he is basically dead in the daughter's eyes, so she doesn't really want him to go and see him, and he ends up going with Paul Rudd's character, who's now currently with his wife. And they end up going to, it's in a movie set in Canada, and they end up going to New York. Paul Giamatti has to sneak over the border because he's not allowed to leave because he's on parole, but he sneaks over there to sell Christmas trees in New York. And it's basically about them, both of them, who were both criminals in the past, trying to set their life right and try and make a decent, an honest living with not having to, resort to crime and, stealing and things like that. It's just a really a heartfelt movie about them, selling these Christmas trees and kind of having all kinds of problems. And to me, though, I really liked this one a lot. Like I said, I don't know why this one didn't get a theatrical release, and I didn't hear much about it because they were both really good. Paul Rudd is really, really different in this. And it's basically about James Gandolfini meets this one woman, and you kind of find out a little more and more about her. But she's like a dentist, and she's kind of helping him out. And, they have to sleep in this terrible little shack they bring along, and they have no heat. It's really a ton of terrible kind of stuff they have to go through to sell these trees. The next one from Anchor Bay as well. This is one I was really looking forward to seeing, and this is the story. And a lot of people say, kind of say, oh, it may not be true, or some of it may be fabricated, because there's a lot of people that, have mixed feelings about what Linda Lovelace, her story, but she took, polygraphs and things like that, back when she wrote the book about, what happened to her. But it's Lovelace, which is the story of Linda Lovelace, who was pretty much not now the most known, but at the time, the most known porn star around. Well, she only really did one movie, which was, I'm not going to say it in this video, but basically, it's this one, the most known adult film, which was the first one. The one that, too, when you watch documentaries about it and things like that, was one of the first movies that, couples and stuff would go to see this one in the adult theaters. And it's Amanda Seyfried playing Linda Lovelace, and it kind of about her meeting her boyfriend, who kind of, shows him in the beginning as someone all right, and then it kind of goes back and shows you what a terrible, abusive person he was, and kind of forcing her into making this adult film, and he was beating her, and it's just a really terrible, because I said too, you never know. I think it probably did happen. I think it all happened as she said, but a lot of people kind of have mixed opinions about it, and it's one of those kind of things that's kind of had a lot of controversy behind it. But it's got a whole bunch of cameos in this one. Hank Azaria's in this. James Franco plays Hugh Hefner. It's just a really pretty cool, in my opinion, pretty good biopic. Not absolutely perfect, but pretty well done. Juno Temple plays her friend in the film. I like this a lot. I've watched the documentary on the film before too, about the making of the adult film. But, to me, I think it's definitely worth checking out. The next one is from Image, and this is Diablo Cody's movie. This is the first movie that she's ever directed. She wrote this film, of course, as well. I thought she did a pretty good job on this one. It's basically about this girl who, it almost kind of was like one of the Duggars. If you ever seen 19 Kids and Counting, that kind of a person who is very sheltered, doesn't watch TV, deeply religious family, who, wasn't allowed to do anything, all these things that she couldn't do, all the, the way she had to dress and things like that. She ended up in this plane crash and ended up getting very badly burned, and basically has questioned her faith and everything that she's done in her past, and really feels like she's done nothing because of how sheltered she was, and ends up basically leaving the church and leaving everyone and going to Vegas, which is, like as she sees it, Sin City, and she's basically there to do everything that she couldn't do. And while she's there, she ends up meeting Russell Brand, who works at a bar. Russell Brand's character, who works at a bar, and Octavia Spencer, who's a singer at the bar. And it's kind of about her going around with them, kind of experiencing Vegas, but she's kind of reluctant to do certain things, and it's really tough for her to get past, how sheltered she was and how many things she wasn't able to do. I thought it was really good. You can tell when you watch movies that she's written, they kind of all have a real similar kind of feel to them. I think her best movie that she wrote was Juno, but I even like Jennifer's Body. It wasn't an outstanding film. This was, to me, kind of on the same vibe of a movie like Juno, that kind of thing. It's just, to me, I thought Russell Brand did a really good job in this. Of course, Octavia Spencer is good in everything. The lead, though, is Julianne Hough. I don't know how you say your name for sure. She was in Rock of Ages. I just would definitely recommend this one. I thought for Diablo Cody's first directing job, I thought she did a really good job. And the next one from Magnolia, and this was really pretty sad, and I remember hearing about this happening. And this is a documentary on killer whales at SeaWorld, and it's Blackfish. And it's basically, what prompted this documentary to happen was about, in 2010, one of the trainers, who was one of the top trainers at SeaWorld, ended up getting killed by the killer whale. And it's basically about, kind of examining what happened and then looking back on other incidences with this whale and other incidences that have happened with other killer whales. It kind of makes you not really want to go to SeaWorld again. In my opinion, it was just, to me, it's just so sad. And the stuff when they show them taking the whales from the family, and the whales are kind of crying, and it just, to me, it was just such a sad thing. And the whale that ended up killing the trainer, they kind of flash back to the whale was part of this group in the early 90s that was kind of like this tank in the middle of the ocean. It was kind of just sectioned off that people would go in Canada, and there was an accident and someone died at this park with the same whale. So it's kind of has happened before, and it kind of talks about all the other incidences at SeaWorld and things like that. Just like I said, it was really, really sad. They talk with the old trainers that have worked at SeaWorld. And the thing that was pretty cool was they had a lot of footage of the people. So they would cut back to them working with the killer whales and things like that. To me, though, this is one of the better documentaries I've seen in a long time. But like I said, though, I was crying a lot in this. It's pretty sad. The next one from Magnolia as well is Syrup. And it stars Amber Heard and Shira Fernandez, who was just in that movie Plush that I talked about in the last update. And it's basically about, he ends up kind of wanting to make his mark and make a product that gets him kind of rich. And he has the idea to make this, energy drink, and he has a certain name for it. And he ends up getting, finding a way to talk to Amber Heard as this, one of the main people at this energy drink factory, company that kind of is all about branding, and she's all about image and kind of creating this look for herself and things like that. And he ends up, pitching his idea. His roommate ends up stealing the name right when he's about to make his millions with it, because he doesn't copyright it. So it's basically about, he's down on his luck, and Amber Heard's character ends up meeting him a number of months later, feels bad for what happened, ends up bringing him in to work on the campaign for the thing that he actually created that was stolen from him. The ad campaign. It's about them kind of having, you can tell they kind of like each other, but they aren't. There's kind of something weird with how Amber Heard is kind of treating his character, and there's just some kind of mistreating, and you can't tell if she's just sort of using him to get what she wants and things like that. It kind of reminds me of a movie like Devil Wears Prada, that kind of a feeling movie about, a company and corporate and that kind of stuff. Wasn't an absolutely amazing movie, but I like Amber Heard in a lot of things. So this I thought was worth watching, but like I said, not some of it was just a little bit slow. And the next one from Doppelganger releasing is 100 Bloody Acres. This was a really fun Australian film. It's about these two brothers that have this fertilizer business, and the one brother is kind of brings in dead bodies that he finds on the road and kind of uses their bones and things like that to make this fertilizer. And he doesn't kill anybody, but he just brings the bodies off the road, and he ends up bringing this one body in a car accident, and these group of these friends end up breaking down and asking him for a ride, and he ends up letting them go, giving them a ride into town, and ends up putting the guys in the back with the body, and he kind of hides it away so they don't see it. They end up finding the body, and then they're freaking out, and he ends up not knowing what to do, and ends up basically tying them up with his brother, and his brother is pretty nuts. His brother is the guy who was the guy with the big beard in the Insidious films. I had no idea the guy was Australian. He really, I never would have guessed, because I hadn't really seen him in too many other things though. And the other guy, who's the main brother, was from a number of different movies. He was in the House of Wax remake as the crazy killer in that. To me though, this was just an interesting thing, and he really likes the one girl that he ends up picking up to help, but it's kind of like struggling with his brother who really wants to kill them. And it's kind of like there's an interesting thing in here too. There's a sequence in this kind of storybook land when the one character gets away to this storybook land. It kind of reminds me of this place I used to go as a kid, where you see like nursery rhymes and things like that brought to life, and it was real cheesy in this. I don't know, I really had a fun time with this one. I would definitely recommend checking this one out. It's a little hard to explain all the details of it. The next one from Music Box Films. This movie, to me, was one of the most downer movies I think I've probably watched in my entire life. It's one of those ones that kind of like puts you in like a really weird mood, because it was so like, oof, just like when you think about like downers, and not even as much as sad as much as just like puts you in this really strange state. And it's The Wall. It's about this woman who goes on a trip, and I think it's with her friends or her mother. I don't know exactly who the characters are, but she goes on a trip and goes to this hunting cabin, and the characters end up going off and leaving her there. They go into town to get food and things like that. She ends up staying, wakes up the next morning, and it's her and their dog. And she ends up basically not being able to leave. There's just like invisible wall. And, and then she tries to go to another area, and there's an invisible wall. And you can see like the neighbors behind the wall kind of frozen in position. And it's basically about her like dealing with this and being stuck in this situation through the winter, and like I said, and about the dog. I mean, to me, like I said, this was the biggest downer I have ever watched in my entire life. It was worse to me than Bicentennial Man for being depressing. Like, I can't recommend it just because, it's well done, but just so depressing. And it's The Wall, but it was not bad, but just whoa. The next one from Lionsgate, now I will say there's no clown in this movie, is Killer Holiday. I was really looking forward to seeing this though. It stars Howie Mandel's son, Alex Mandel. I think this is his first movie, but he's been in a lot of his dad's like hidden camera sketches and things like that. And he did a pretty good job in this, I thought. I definitely would like to see him do more movies. And there's a feature on here, like a quick thing on the behind the scenes when Howie Mandel comes to set, and it's one of the days when something bad happens to his son's character, and he's like, I can't be there, I gotta leave, so he comes back the next day. I don't know, I like that stuff on there. But it's basically about these kids that are going on kind of a road trip. I will say though, the kids in this movie, I've never seen kids that don't like each other so much. Like, the kids like seem like they all hated each other, like, the characters in the movie. And they end up, there's a lot of Route 66 attractions that they stop at, but end up coming to this old closed down kind of amusement park with like a haunted house. But in the beginning of the movie, you see this guy, and he's like a normal looking guy, like killing the one's mother and father, and then like I don't know, like the killer in this wasn't really that great. He was like a real normal kind of guy. But they end up getting to this amusement park, and the guy's named Spider and killing them off one by one. It's okay. Like I said though, like they show this clown in the back, and like to me, like I was really hoping he would be like a cool killer clown in this, and like I kept on thinking of like different ways I would have done this, because it wasn't really that amazing. Like I said though, I liked Alex Mandel in it, and I like the idea of this one, but just one to me just was not perfect. And there's some editing stuff in this in the first like half of the movie. Like the first 30 minutes they do it a lot when they kind of cut to black and white, kind of like I don't really know why they were doing that. And some of the music was kind of like this bad kind of music they could like put in there. I don't know, like just not a perfect one. You know me, I could try and find good things about stuff, but this one really wasn't perfect at all. The next one from Paramount is Dexter, the final season. Now, I have, missed a lot. I've kind of seen sporadically certain seasons of the show. I thought the last season was pretty good. A lot of people don't like the end. I don't want to get into too much on that, but a lot of people don't like the way this show ended. To me, I thought it was all right, how it ends up wrapping up. But with things like this, it's really tough to figure out how to end a show like this. This had a pretty long run. I think this was the eighth season of the show. It's basically though Dexter is a cop that does investigating, murders and like the blood and things like that. And, he's a serial killer himself. And, half the shows are them trying to find him, and basically he's the one they're trying to find. So it's to me is a pretty good show. It's got a bunch of different features on here, behind the scenes and things like that. To me, though, I would definitely recommend this. If you like the show, you want to see the final season of this, I would definitely recommend checking it out. Now, the next one is from Image as well, and it's the complete first season of The Twilight Zone. Now, there's going to be a new collection of all, I think it's 5 or 6 seasons together coming out, I think in like 2 or 3 weeks, all the seasons together. This was, to me, one of my top anthology, TV series, next to... of course, The Outer Limits and Monsters. Of course, they made the Twilight Zone movie after this. The movie was pretty good. I watched it again recently. But this, to me, is a really, really good, classic anthology series. Like I said, too, definitely check out the full collection coming out in a couple weeks. The next one, this is one a lot of people have asked me about, and it's Maniac, the Maniac remake starring Elijah Wood. And I'm going to say, you are never going to think of Elijah Wood the same after seeing this. And I think it's a good thing for his career because he is so different. And it's perfect casting on him as the killer because in the original one, he's somebody, the kind of character you kind of could see. Elijah Wood is kind of someone that, I think he's like 31 or something, but really looks like he's a kid, still looks really young, and doesn't look like the person who would be a serial killer. And it kind of works to this. And the movie's all done from the perspective of the killer. So it's all from Elijah Wood's perspective. The only time you ever see Elijah Wood is when he's in the mirror and then in his kind of fantasies. The music in this, though, is absolutely amazing. Kind of reminds me of Drive with a real old school 80s synth vibe and then mixed with modern too. But I would highly recommend this remake. And the last one I got is the movie that made me paranoid as a kid. I saw this movie, rented this one in a big box VHS from Blockbuster when I was probably 6 or 7, and made me scared to death of bees. And I couldn't even go into the house. I had to run into the house because there was this tree by the front door of the house that had bees in it all the time. And during the summer when the bees were out, I used to have to run in. I was so paranoid of bees because of this, especially the one girl that has this flute thing that gets killed in this, but it's Savage Bees. And to me, this is my favorite killer bee movie about these African killer bees that come to America, and they end up, killing everybody, and there's these great attack scenes in this. Always remember these two pirates that go to this hot dog stand, and they end up getting, dressed as pirates, and end up getting killed by the bees, and, the outcome of this one was great. But, like I said, this is the movie that made me paranoid of bees. This is out from Cheesy Flicks, though. To me, this is a really fun one, though. The first 10 minutes, though, you can tell it's taken by a tape, and I don't even know if there's a really amazing print of this in existence. But, it's got a lot of tracking and stuff in the beginning, but then it clears up about 10 minutes in. But if you like killer bee films, that is one you have got to watch. Anyway, guys, thanks again for watching the new DVD Blu-ray update, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys later.